Hey everyone, it's me, John Lorden. Welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch Case Cracked. Before we get started, I have to give a very big thank you to Luna Potter for sending this my way. This is a case that has been cracked just within the past month, so some recent developments around this, and if the story interests you, you should definitely jump onto Google News, do a search, and you will probably find some updates about this case. With that all being said, let's get started on the case of Sharon Schollmeyer. 1977, Salt Lake City, Utah. Sharon Schollmeyer was apparently eager to start life. A 16-year-old who was emancipated from her parents, she was already working as a waitress and had her own apartment on First Avenue. Her relationship with her mother, Sally Cadlick, was going well. They had just been out shopping together on December 4th, 1977. Sharon mentioned that she wanted to move soon due to a burglary that had occurred in her apartment building just a few weeks before. The next day, on December 5th, Sally got a call from the restaurant that Sharon worked at. She didn't show up for a scheduled shift. This immediately alarmed Sally, since Sharon was so responsible and reliable. Sally headed over to Sharon's apartment. Patrick McCabe, the building manager, unlocked the deadbolt and let Sally into Sharon's apartment. He stayed in the living room while Sally looked around. In the bathroom, a mother's worst nightmare came to life. Sally found her daughter dead in the bathtub. Sharon was nude in about 6 inches of water. A scarf was tied around her head, covering her eyes and nose. A gag was stuffed in her mouth, and she was bound by nylons and rope. A butcher knife laid on the bath mat nearby. Patrick called the Salt Lake City Police Department. Detectives arrived and interviewed Sally. They also noticed that the windows were open in Sharon's bedroom and living room. There were no signs of a forced entry. It was possible that the suspect came up the fire escape leading to the bedroom window, but the bottom ladder for the fire escape was 10 to 12 feet off the ground. The autopsy was conducted the following day, and it was determined that the manner of death was homicide, caused by strangulation and suffocation. Investigators were unable to crack the case, and it eventually went cold. The gag used was actually Sharon's own halter top. In 2013, the National Institute of Justice funded a grant specifically to help cold cases. Detective Michael Hardin sent the halter top in for DNA testing, and after 36 years of sitting in evidence storage, a DNA profile for one man came back. 3 years later, the profile was submitted to the FBI database CODIS, and on December 6th of 2016, 39 years and 1 day after Sharon's death, they had identified their man. He had another conviction for sexually assaulting a minor in 1999. His name was Patrick Michael McCabe, Sharon's apartment building manager. The same guy that let her mother, Sally, into the apartment to discover her daughter and called police to report the death was the culprit. In a recent interview, Sally said, quote, "What kind of guts he had. I mean, really, he knew what he had done and yet he went ahead and let me in?" Patrick had left Utah in 1978, and except for one overnight visit, he was never back in the state. He was living in Bell, Florida when police caught up with him just this year, and on March 1st of 2017, Patrick, now 59 years old, admitted to raping and strangling Sharon Schollmeyer. McCabe stated that on December 4th, he used his key to get into Sharon's apartment as she slept. He then said he raped the girl at knife point, took her to the bathtub, strangled her, and held her head underwater. Patrick McCabe was extradited to Utah just this past weekend, March 4th and 5th of 2017. He faces 3 charges. If convicted, he could face the death penalty on a murder charge, as well as up to 2 life sentences for aggravated burglary and aggravated sexual assault. Quote, "You can't put it into words," Salt Lake County District Attorney Sim Gill said of solving the case. "The charges and this arrest are a significant step towards justice for the alleged victim, her family, and the community." He also credited great police work and a determination from detectives who would not give up. Personally, I credit that grant that happened for the cold case DNA testing. That seemed to have been a major piece in getting this case cracked. And unfortunately, there's not a ton of information about this case. It seems like police were a bit tight-lipped about the details. They didn't even disclose the manner of death until after this confession came out. So if you look at it now, you're going to see a bunch of news stories that are current about what he said and what he did, but there's not a whole lot of information that predates that. Unfortunately, I could only find very little information on the type of person that Sharon was. I found no real explanation for why she was emancipated. There's also practically no mention of her father or what type of situation was going on there. I think it's very interesting to me that you had a 16-year-old that was out living on her own in this way, and it seems like potentially it was a bit of a risk to do so. But I'm kind of curious just about the dynamic there, because apparently it seems like she was getting along with her mother. I mean, they had gone out shopping on that same day. And I really just have to echo what her mother said in that recent statement. I mean, this guy, the nerve of this guy was almost ridiculous. And knowing that he has this charge and he has a charge for another issue with a minor, I'm almost wondering if we're going to hear about more confessions or more charges that are coming his way. He's already lived 59 years of life. If he really does have this thing against young women for some reason, there might be even more of a trail that we haven't uncovered yet. So kind of keeping my fingers crossed that maybe some more cases will get solved in this as well. But another cold case cracked. In terms of what people are talking about online about this case, a lot of people seem to be upset about the matter of how much time that it took for the DNA sample. Like I said, this grant kind of kicked the money in for that sample to happen, so I understand that, unfortunately, money is an issue in processing some of these cases. Luckily, the money showed up. A detective had the proper thought to send in that item that was used as a mouth gag, and they got some information back from that. But even after that, you have almost a 3-year gap before that information was actually entered into CODIS. A different detective handled that. They had to send it through a separate department. I just wonder if that whole process could be streamlined a little bit, because it seems like once it did get into CODIS, the match to Patrick came fairly quickly. It was just the path to get there was very slow. I also wonder, apparently he had used that knife, that butcher knife, to scare her into doing whatever he wanted, basically. I wonder if they checked that knife for prints when they were investigating the scene. Was there some chance that they could have found out back then? I don't know. I have seen some comments that allude to it's possible the police actually had a confession from him before this recent one. I don't know if those are really valid. I couldn't find any information to support it, but I'm really wondering about that knife and why there wasn't evidence on that might have been able to point them in the right direction. Quite honestly, I don't even know if he was considered a suspect. Obviously, he had access. They noticed that there was no break-in that happened at her place, so it should have crossed someone's mind, but somehow this guy got away for 39 years before it came down on him. And I do think it's fortunate that once it did come down on him, he did confess. So I think this thing's going to go through trial pretty easily. You have the DNA match, you have a confession. I don't think it gets any better than that, but we'll have to see ultimately what he serves. I'm pretty certain he's going to wind up with at least life in prison. I also could not find any information on what the robbery angle is, but I assume that maybe there was something of value in her apartment, maybe some jewelry or something that he had also taken, because there is also a robbery charge on here. So, case cracked. Tell me what you think about it in the description box below. Once again, thank you so much to Luna Potter for cluing me in on this one. I hope you are all having a great week. Thank you for spending a little time with me here on the Lord and Arch channel. I'll see you back here on the next show. Take care.